G'day viewers, this is my planted Brazilian sort of style tank, and together we'll start with an empty box and we'll go right through to the stage we're at. Then I'll list all of the plants and inhabitants, and then stay to the end because there's a bit of an update where things got changed around and I'll show you what it looks like now, so stay tuned. Okay viewers, the tank for this scape is 2 feet by 18 inches by 18 inches, which is about 120 litres or 32 or so US gallons. And all I've done is put some frosted window film on the back for the background, which goes on the outside of the tank. And I've installed a small under gravel filter plate underneath, which will allow oxygen to get all the way through the aqua soil at the back and stop that dead zone underneath. I won't show you how I did it, but if you watch this video, that will explain everything, and the DIY uplift tube as well. So now I'll just throw some lava rock on there because it's cheaper than aqua soil, and just to build it up a little bit. And this is the stuff that you use in your barbecue, so it's aquarium safe. And then we just start pouring on the aqua soil, try and build it up the back a little bit. Now for the hardscape, I've gone with black ceru stone, and we're going to use these 2 biggest pieces I have, and they're going to hold that hill in so the hill doesn't collapse on us and support the rest of the scape. And now it's just a matter of playing around and seeing what looks good. I'd like to have gone a lot higher, but I just used what rocks I had, and living out where I do, it's a long way to go and get any more. And then once I got everything roughly where I wanted it, just used a few smaller pieces to support things and to hold all that aqua soil in place so it doesn't all run down the hill once we put water in. Then clear an area for the front for a bit of sand. And speaking of sand, here's a bag of paving sand which I got from the hardware store. It's white without being too white, so it won't be all glary. But it did need a really good clean out. There's a lot of clay and dirt and stuff in it. So once we gave it a really good clean out, to make life easier spreading it around in the aquarium, decided to dry it out on this bit of plastic so it doesn't all stick together and clump and make life hard. And fortunately for me, where I live, it's nice and sunny, and it only took about an hour to dry it right out. And if you're going to try this at home yourself, viewers, make sure you have a good couple of very well trained, very dangerous guard dogs to keep an eye on things for you. It'll keep the birds off and make sure no one steals it. Now just clean up an area down the bottom with the card. Make a nice soft edge to blend in the aqua soil and the sand. And this is why I dried the sand. It makes it a lot easier to pour out like that. And having that soft edge will allow the ground cover to grow over the edge of the sand and still have some soil underneath to soften that edge. Then we just make the path up the hill. We start wider at the bottom and they get narrower at the top, which will add to that bit of forced perspective and make the tank look a little bit deeper than what it actually is. Then give it a quick spray down just to keep everything still where it is. Time to add some small detail stones and some stones to go along the edge of that track. But because I didn't have any stones, the best way to get small stones is start with a big stone and a hammer. But now everything here in Gil's fish room is safety first, so we're going to put a mask on because it's going to let a bit of dust go. I'm going to put some nice thick safety glasses on because there might be a few small stone chips flying around and I really don't want to cop one of those in the eye. And then a nice thick pair of gloves in case there's any sharp edges and so I don't break a nail. And now we're ready to make some small stones. So we put the big piece of slate on the ground, cold chisel and a hammer, and away we go. And now it's just a matter of getting to whatever size you want. If you want very small ones, which there's sort of no point because the plants will grow over it and you won't even see them. But I want some longer, thicker ones to go along that edge and try and keep the sand where it's meant to be and keep the soil off the sand. Now for the ground cover, I cheated and I've had a little bit of a head start by putting some Monte Carlo in these containers, and they've been in there for a couple of weeks, so it's sort of a mini dry start. So they've already developed roots and grown into clumps, and so this way we don't have to bury them because we're going to do a dry start on this tank. So just sit them on top with the roots down and away we go. And even though I gave myself a bit of a head start by starting them off in those containers, you could do this with plants straight out of a tissue culture cup. Very simple. Now the reasons for a dry start is number one, it gives these plants time to put roots down into the soil, so when you fill the tank they don't all float away and go absolutely everywhere. And number two is they have a lot of access to CO2, so as long as we keep everything damp and we open up the top for 10 minutes every day, they're going to grow a lot better than what they would if there was water in there. And for further up the hill, I've also started some HC Cuba, which looks pretty much like Monte Carlo, just smaller. So it looks like it's further away, so that'll help with our depth perspective. So same thing, just sit it on top of that damp aqua soil. And those viewers that are actually paying attention might notice there's a bit of a bare patch on that right hand side about halfway up. There's a bit of a ledge there, it's sort of a terrace, and I'll have a particular plant in mind to go in there, so that's why I won't be planting any ground covers there. Maybe just around the edge of that rock and that little gap up between those two top rocks. Now we give everything a good spray down, and I've made a mistake in the past by using used aquarium water for this, and it's containing nitrates and fertilisers and bits and pieces, and all that did, whereas the plants grew, but a lot of different kinds of algae grew as well. So for this one, I'm just going to use fresh water. So now everything's nice and damp. We're going to cover it with cling film or saran wrap or glad wrap or whatever you want to call it, the stuff you wrap your sandwiches up in to keep them fresh. And we're going to cover all of the top, and that'll keep all of that moisture in, keep it nice and humid so nothing can dry out. And we'll keep our lights on for 12 hours a day, opening it up for 10 or 15 minutes every day to let all that dank air out and let new fresh air in. That'll stop a bit of mould and allow more CO2 to get in there. And then we'll give it a spray down with the bottle as well to keep everything damp. But not with fish tank water, with fresh water. And this is after about 4 weeks, and have a look at the roots on that. Unbelievable. We have to be happy with that. So this is what the tank looked like before I started the dry start. And this is what it looks like now, 4 weeks later. Unbelievable growth. So now we add the stem plants at the back, and this will make it probably more of a Brazilian style scape than anything else. So we're starting with green Rotala, which is one of my favourites, those really fine leaves, and it gets nice and compact and bushy, and yeah, I really like it. So we'll start with that at the end, that'll be in both corners, and then we'll work towards a different shade in the middle. So next up is Rotala rotundifolia Ceylon, which has more of a pinkish, sort of slightly bigger leaf and more of a pinkish hue to it. So then after that, we'll start going more and more red. We'll go Rotala Hira, which is more red than the Ceylon, but not as red as this Rotala Blood Red, which I've been growing in my little plant tank there. So we'll score some free cuttings from there. And then we'll put those either side of that gap. And if anyone's looked into proper fancy aquascaping or anything like that, you'll know about the rule of thirds and the focus point or end point. And so if you line up that gap in between those two rocks, it's about a third of the way across the tank, and it's probably a bit closer to the middle, but you know what I mean. So we put our Rotala Blood Red either side there. We'll give it a quick spray and keep everything nice and damp, stop it drying out while I fiddle around. And now this is some Rotala Colorata, and then in the corner we will go with some more green Rotala. Now there's one more plant that I haven't got yet, which will go in front there, so we'll just leave that for now, but we'll plant the green Rotala there, and then we'll move across to that little bit of a ledge, our little terrace there, which we spoke of. And on said terrace we're going to try some Rotala Mexicana Goias, which is a low growing Rotala. It's meant to grow along the ground, and then once it gets really bushy it'll start to grow up, and it's meant to be a reddish colour, but it's a new one for me, so we'll try it out and see how it goes. So we give it all a nice spray down to keep everything damp, and it's time to fill with some water. Now for me, instead of putting the hose in and blowing crap everywhere, when I fill a small tank, or even if I do a water change on a small tank, I do it with a bucket and a small hose and then siphon out of the bucket. That way it's nice and slow and won't disturb too much. So we put the plastic bag down so we don't wash the sand out, start the siphon and let it go, and it'll just trickle away, and as it fills up we just fill the bucket. Takes a while, but all that hard work planting everything, I'd hate to see it get washed away now. And so now once that's all filled up, we can move on to the filtration. And while the dry start was happening, I've had this sponge floating in the old sump, so it'll be nice and full of bacteria, all pre-seeded, ready to go. So when it goes in the filter, the tank will have an instant cycle. So we put that in this little cheap old filter. Even though it's a fairly big tank, there'll be a lot of plants in it, so it's just enough for grab a few things out, and mainly as a delivery system for the CO2. So it goes from the regulator up through that one-way valve and into the inline diffuser. And if you would like to know how to set one up and check it for leaks, just watch that video that I referred to earlier. I'll put it down in the description. So here's the tank fully planted, except for that one last plant I'm waiting for. Filter's all connected up, so I'll let that go for a couple of weeks and then start adding some livestock. Now first up is the cleanup crew, and it's just a few cherry shrimp out of my dirt tank. And there they are in there. So I'll show you how I drip acclimate them to introduce them into the new tank. I made up this out of just some air tube, and it's the steel U shape there, which will just hold it on top of the tank, and a tap down the other end to adjust the drip rate. It's a lot easier than trying to tie a knot in it and get it right. So I'll hang that over the corner of the tank. And the most important part is having a container to sit that jug in, because if you're like me, viewers, you'll go and find something else to do and forget all about it. And having it in a container will catch the overflow, which is better than having it go all over the floor. So I'll put the jug with the shrimp in, start a siphon, and I'll just turn that tap down to get a nice slow drip, and then just let that drip away, and then we'll be fine. And through the magic of television, 2 hours or so have gone by and our little jug's full. So now we'll just take them up, net them out of there and put them into the tank. Now the fish currently residing in this tank are Dwarf Siamese Rasboras, which were thought to be extinct at one stage, but they found them in a couple of puddles in Thailand somewhere, and they're slowly being bred back up, although they're still fairly rare in Australia. And they have a strange breeding behaviour where they deposit eggs on the underside of big leaves on plants, so that means they'll be getting their own tank soon, although they have bred in this one. Now the females are a bit bigger and they just have that lovely greeny silvery stripe down the side, and the males are more red and slightly smaller. So now it's time to give the tank a quick trim, make it look pretty. So I'll start by trimming all that Rotala to get it even and taper it down towards the gap in the middle there. And you might notice that plant at the front, that was the one I was waiting for, and it's Rotala Macarena Butterfly. It's a beautiful red colour and it's fairly compact, and it's got curly sort of leaves, and yeah, I really like it. And also down the bottom there I did put a Hydrocotyle Japan just for a bit of difference. But now we just hack right into that HC Cuba because it's fairly thick. I've probably left it a little bit too long to prune it, to be perfectly honest. And that's why I put those nice big stones, and I probably should have gone a bit bigger along the edge of that path because I did knock a fair bit of that aqua soil onto the path. And now the Monte Carlo, just hack it away like a lawnmower. Probably cut it about a half or maybe even 2/3 off the top of it to make it a bit more manageable. Now, as pretty as this tank is and everything, it's nice to have, it's nice to look at, but for me it's not the kind of tank you could just sit in front of and lose yourself for hours watching everything that's going on, because once you've pruned it and the fish swim around it, it's nothing special. If you're the kind of person who just can't let things go and has to interfere and always have your hand in the tank mucking around changing something, well, this is probably the setup for you. But for me it's just something nice to look at, but just have a look and keep walking really. So now we clean up all of that trimmings up the top there, and this is the fun part, it takes forever. And to clean up our nice tidy path, instead of using tweezers and crushing most of it, we're going to use a magnetic pick-up tool to move all of that aqua soil out of the way. Because of the iron content in the soil, it's attracted to the magnet, and this is a much simpler way to do it. And if you get a tool that's long enough, you don't even need to get your hands wet. So once I get the path looking all neat and tidy, I'll leave it for a week or so for those plants to grow in, and then we'll go through and I'll label all of the plants. But stay right to the end because I'll show you what I changed and an update a few months later. Okay, let's stop it right there. It's about 3, maybe 4 months down the track, and I've pulled out a few plants, I've changed a few things out that I didn't like, and I've added some more animals, so let's check that out. First off, the HC Cuba, which grew so well at the start, has just started lifting everywhere. So as it lifts up, I just pull it out. There's still a few bits and pieces in there, a little bit still going through the Monte Carlo, but as it lifts, I just take it out because it's too hard to plant back again. And also for a splash of colour and a bit of a feature at the front, I planted some AR Mini. Started off with one and I've got about 3 or 4 going there now. And the Rotala Goias, it grew well at the start and was that lovely pinky purpley colour, but then it just got too untidy and I got sick of it. So I've changed that out and I've put in some Staurogyne repens, and I'll let that get a little bit taller and form a bit of a bush, hopefully. Now before we get to the creatures, we'll quickly trim the top out of this AR Mini. I need to do this every few weeks. If it gets too tall, it covers that rock and it throws out the levels, and yeah, it just looks really untidy. So we'll trim the top of that and we'll get to some animals. Now to go with the red shrimp, sticking to the red theme, I've added some of these Magenta mystery snails, and this is my favourite colour mystery snail out of all of them. They're beautiful, and this camera doesn't do them justice. They're really vibrant, they look really good, great addition. Also a couple of little Ottocinclus in here helping out with the algae, keeping everything clean. They came out of another tank that I broke down and had nowhere to put them, so this was as good a place as any. Same thing with these guys. These are North Queensland algae eaters. I had a few, nowhere to put them, so I thought I'll put them in here and hopefully they might help keep the tank clean. And apparently they don't breed in fresh water, but I've got a few in here with a few eggs, so we'll just see how that goes. And the Bloody Mary cherry shrimp must be loving the conditions because they're breeding like rabbits. Have a look at this little fella here taking on a snail about 10 times his size. Well viewers, this is what the tank looks like now. So as always, if you like leaving likes, leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye bye. See you later.